Good evening. Happy Monday. Welcome to the Celtic Down Under podcast. Obviously, there's been no Celtic game this week. So I guess we're just going to be doing a kind of offhand three-quarter season review. International break is always a bit of a dead time for us, the Celtic family. How's your week been, Tommy? Did you watch the Scotland game or did you not bother?
I actually did. I've never really sort of get into international football that much, but actually had an empty house on Saturday night, so both my daughters were out clubbing and my missus was working, so I actually lay down and watched it in bed, and I thought they were all right, actually. I was quite impressed. Some decent players, some decent moves. Stuart Armstrong, I'm wearing a Stuart Armstrong back of my shirt here, had a couple of good moves, and I quite enjoyed it, actually. It was good to see them and some nice goals, so yeah.
Did you watch it, Anthony?
Well, I remember putting it on, but I was absolutely bloated by that point. So I think I watched about 20 minutes and fell asleep. But I watched the goals back the following day. Good finish from McGinn and McTominay for the second goal in particular. But I would just say, every time I see John McGinn play, particularly when he scores for Scotland, I just think, what could have been for Celtic had we assigned him? He's a great player, and I enjoy watching him. And he's so strong on the ball, and like his goal return for Scotland is up there. It's definitely comparable with some of the greats that have ever played for Scotland. So, and he's still got years to do in his career as well. So exciting.
Do you know who we signed that summer instead of paying the extra $500,000 or whatever it was for John McGinn? Remember?
No, I don't remember, but tell me.
The legendary Yusuf Malumbu.
Very comparable.
Yeah, that's the one that always sticks out in my head when people talk about Lawwell ball. I'm like, yeah, didn't want to pay for McGinn, so we got Yusuf Malumbu. The other one as well was when we were supposed to get Stephen Fletcher and we ended up with Willow Flood instead.
Bad memories, mate. Bad memories.
Change times now. And I also seen that the Subway. Do you notice that's the Subway Socceroos? That's what. So if you go in if you Google Australian men's national team, instead of coming up with Socceroos or Australian national team, it comes up with Subway Socceroos. They've actually changed the name of the national team to have a sponsor as the lead of the name. Is this a new thing? I wasn't aware of it until today or yesterday.
Well, all I'd say is I was watching the highlights, sorry, Tommy, and it was just Subway all around the stadium. Like, you couldn't miss it. There was like 2 rows of electronic billboarding all the way around Parramatta Stadium, and it just said Subway. So it was like, they definitely have paid for the rights well and truly there. But again, I didn't really know the game was on. I knew obviously international break or whatever, but it totally passed me by that the game was on. So I sort of like the guys were chatting about it in the group chat. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I sort of watched the highlights there again. And but yeah, it's football in this country just doesn't get the promotion that it deserves and it needs badly.
Shane's in the comments. Subway Socceroos is better than Caltex Socceroos. I feel that one was less overtly branded, the Caltex one. I don't know why Subway for some reason is. I think because it's alliterative. Somebody just went, yeah, this is brilliant. Let's just get it out there. Yeah. Tommy, did you see any of the Aussie game or any other international football?
No, I haven't. And just to Anthony's point, I still didn't even know what the score was. To be honest. Yeah. I don't even know if they won or lost. I'm assuming they won. But there was no on the websites that I look at. Couldn't even see a result. And given Aaron Moy wasn't playing, that was probably the most important thing for me. Is he's back in Glasgow, resting up and getting treatment. So that was probably the thing that I was more happy about. Yeah.
Yep, they beat Ecuador 3-1, and it's like a double header of friendlies. So there's another game on Tuesday. There was, as you said, Aaron Moy was not in the squad. He withdrew, but there's been quite a lot of I know the Tuesday and Wednesday guys are going to talk about it in a bit more depth. But there's been a lot of Celtic players dropping with injury from international duty. We had Taylor didn't even go in the first place. Same with Carter Vickers due to injury. Ralston was called up, then pulled out. Maeda came home after sitting on the bench for Japan. Didn't even get off the subs bench. Abada injured in training for Israel. He's back now. and there was another one sent home. No, I think that's it, actually. So it's not, in terms of health and fitness, maybe it's a good time to have a break, or maybe this is a problem. I'm not sure. Yeah. If you guys...
Yeah, look, I think...
Yeah,
look, I've been keeping track of that. Sorry, Sean. I have been keeping track of that because I think that's one thing that actually, if you have a look at our season so far this year, compared to last year, particularly in the first half of the season, like we had so many soft tissue injuries, whereas this year we haven't had as many. And now they seem to be occurring at just the wrong stage of the season. Haksabanovic is another one. He came off at half time.
That's right.
Not sure if that was an injury or tactical because they made 2 changes at half time. But yeah, look, it's the wrong time of the season. But I do think that, we're in a lot better place as a club to deal with the injuries than we were, say, 12, 18 months ago. So
it always brings me back to this idea I heard, and it wasn't my idea, but when I did hear it, I absolutely loved it, is that what they should do is just have 1 month of the year and you play your international football, all happens in that month. So you're not pissing about going back and forward between club and country. Do you know what I mean? And it can be whatever TV deal. I'm sure there's financial reasons why they don't want to do it. Like Hampden can't sell tickets all year round, kind of thing, or something like that. But it's just, I can't be annoyed with the pissing about, to be honest.
Well, it affects us more so because we've got players playing on the opposite side of the world. So, having Japanese players, Korean players, Australian players, we are the most greatly affected by that, particularly if the ties are in Australia or in Asia. If they're sort of in Dubai or in Europe, then obviously the effect's more minimized. But it's probably the one drawback from signing players from that side of the world in European competition, I suppose. If there is a drawback.
Oh, we've still got another round of games to get through this week with hopefully no injuries. Callum McGregor got man of the match against Cyprus. He's got Spain on Tuesday night. Hopefully he's fine and everyone else makes it back healthy. So that was just a quick update. I think the guys tomorrow and Wednesday are going to do a bit more detail on that. But our purpose tonight, we normally review what has happened over the weekend. But since nothing Celtic related other than players being on international duty, Mikey Johnson was the other one. But again, as a Tuesday, Wednesday topic. We are focused on a 3-quarter season review here, where what we're going to do is we're going to first of all look at the context of our league performance, the historical context. And then we're going to look back over some of the key moments in this season that have put us in the position we're in, where we are today. So to start with, on the kind of the holistic overall review. So I'm not going to go into the European performance because, to be honest, that's been buried since November and it's been done to death. So just focusing on domestically, we have won the League Cup, which is great. And we can talk a bit more about what that means when we do have it in the run sheet later. But the league performance itself, we are 29 games deep, which means there's 9 games left. So it's not exactly 3 quarters, but it's pretty close to it. From 29 games, we've had 27 wins and 1 draw and 1 defeat. So that gives us a total of 82 points. So that sounds pretty meaningless on the face of it. It is what it is. No context, okay? And now I didn't get the numbers for every single season, but I went back through as many seasons in my head, like, okay, that was a successful season. Go back and check. And I checked back, and how many seasons do you think would stack up against this one? How many would better or equal it?
Well, given we've seen the run sheet, we're cheating.
How many would you expect?
But realistically, you would have thought it would be up there because only 1 defeat. Have we drawn any games? 1 draw.
1 draw, 1 defeat.
I mean, yeah. So I mean, maybe the Invincible season you would think would maybe be up there. But yeah, look, it's been outstanding so far. But in terms of previous ones, I reckon 0.
Yeah, look, it's statistically speaking, this is our second best ever. The only season that surpasses this season in terms of points scored after 29 games is the Invincible season. And I even stacked that up. Fake shock. I even stacked that up against the Lisbon Lions season and converting the wins to 3-point wins. They were still only on a 76-point pace after 29 games. So is statistically our second best ever league season up to the 29 game mark, which really surprised me. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, I was just trying to say, Sean, I've wrote some statistics of the first 10 games post the winter break. This season, we're going 28 from 30 points. And that's the best that we've done in any season in the last. So all those seasons that stack up, even the Invincible season, we were 28 out of 30 points after those 10 games. So we notoriously come back strong. The worst season that we had was 21 out of 30, and that was the Lennon Kennedy season of 2021. And then also one of Rogers' seasons was actually also 21 out of 30 points in the return from the break. But in every one of those, bar when we lost the league, we've outstripped Rangers or Sevco in that final, that first 10 points. So this season, they're actually level with us. So they actually managed 28 points out of 30 as well, which is the first time they've achieved that ever. So I guess you could say that Beale's maybe keeping up with us. He's not bridged the gap, but he is sort of hanging in there, I guess, is the word I would probably, the term I'd probably use. It's quite interesting. So, because notoriously they've come back and lost and dropped points. So 19 out of 30, 17 out of 30, 18 out of 30, 19 out of 30, 13 out of 30. So they've usually fallen in a hole after Christmas or after New Year, whereas we usually go on and grab the title sort of thing. So this season they've actually managed to keep pace with us, which is the first time they've done that. Well, as far back as the records that we've looked at today. So
and it's interesting, like, because when you look at some of it dispassionately, like for example, the Lennon and John Kennedy season where we lost to 10 and everything was a dumpster fire, and you look at it, we were on, after 29 games, we're on 64 points. But if you compare that to, for example, this Ronnie Dyla's second title, he was on 66 points, so he was only on 2 points more. The season where Lennon takes over from Rogers, when Rogers sneaks out, 67 points after 28. So there's only 3 points better off. So as much as we say, oh, we just focus on ourselves, it doesn't matter what they do, it kind of does. Because there's 4 examples of not much better than the Lennon/Kennedy's failed season. It just so happened that Sevco were doing worse than us in those seasons, or not in the top flight at that point. So as much as we don't want it to be, it does matter. And the fact is that they are having a great season. They're on 79. How many? They're on 73 points right now, which again is better pace than about half of our previous title winning seasons in recent years. So to say that they're bad is also to discredit how good we have been. We have just been that good, and they're actually, I feel their fans are overreacting because we are that good. So in their minds, if we're that good, they must be that bad. But they're actually not that bad. It's just we are that good. Tommy?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, it's one thing you always look for. I mean, as much as I say I don't pay attention to Rangers, is you'll always sort of look for the result and see how they're going. And one thing they've been since Bill came in is they've been winning all the league games. So it's been very important for us just to keep going with that relentless, I know it's a cliche, but that we never stop mentality. And I think, some of the games that we might touch on tonight sort of go into that mentality and the importance of just keeping going, and because they're still breathing down the necks. But one thing I would say is I can't remember the last time that we actually played a game ahead of them to go 12 points clear. I might be wrong. But I don't think we've actually had an opportunity to put that additional pressure on them. It's always been the case of them either playing at the same time or before us and cutting the gap. So I'm not sure if that's correct or not. But we just got to keep winning.
I'm not sure what it is in 2023, but I read the other day that this season they've played ahead of us 16 times and we've played ahead of them 6 times. Have you got that answer in your sheet?
Yeah, well, I did note that we've played a lot of Sunday games, so like that's really taking the pressure off them in terms of they can go out and win, whereas very rarely it was the other way around, where because usually when we play on a Saturday, they're also playing a Saturday at the same time, so we haven't often had that advantage of putting down a marker and then them having to back it up on a Sunday and try and matches sort of things. So that has been something I've noticed this season for some reason.
And sorry, just one final point on that. In the last 2 seasons, that's probably one thing where they have really struggled is when the pressure is on them and they have to win. They know that we've won before them. We've coped with it well, but they generally don't cope with the pressure that well. So not sure how that's happened, but I think it's relevant.
If one were being cynical, one might suggest that also having us play second takes the headlines away from any honest mistakes that happen on the Saturday, if you know what I'm saying. If one were to be cynical, not that one ever would. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll get onto our moments that have shaped the season. So when this was originally conceived, it was moments was the literal word that was used, but as we've read it out, it's kind of turned into a list of results, to be honest. But I think we can certainly pick a key moment from each day of that point to be the focus. So what I'll do is I'll just run through them and I'll just chuck it over to the person who added it to the list to get their thoughts on why this is a moment that shaped the season. So the first one up was yourself, Anthony. So you had in the summer transfer window was the first moment that really shaped this season so far. And would you like to elaborate on that?
Well, I just say it was a statement of intent of signing both Jota and CCV. We're obviously at the end of the season, we're thinking, are we going to get one of them? Are we going to get both of them? Or are we going to do a Celtic and not get either of them? So we obviously signed CCV first. And I thought, well, that's probably out of the two. I would say that was probably the more critical of the two personally. And then obviously Jota was doing his world tour of the States and Mexico and everywhere. We're going, is he going to sign? Is he not going to sign? And obviously kept us hanging, but eventually he did sign. So I kind of felt getting those two names in, giving them both a home. I think that's been a massive part of our season campaign this season to got us off on the right foot. And then the other one to add in there was the free agency signing of Aaron Moy, which has turned out to be a bit of a masterstroke. Obviously started a bit slow. Obviously coming from China, not being fit, not playing at the sort of Celtic pace, that sort of frenetic SPFL sort of pace. So he obviously took a while to get going, but he's now one of your main guys in your team at the moment and is keeping out a very, very good Matt O'Reilly. So I think that kind of really shaped our summer, so to speak, and got us on the right foot.
Mr. Freeland in the comments is pushing back a little bit. Jota and CCV, we didn't improve though, did we? Which is the kind of we didn't get worse by losing them. So we kind of paid that 12, 13 million, whatever it was, to maintain the squad as it was. Although we did add Moy, as you point out. Tommy, what's your thoughts on the transfer window? How crucial was it? How much did it set us up for this year?
Well, I think the key thing was that we managed to keep them. I mean, even the most optimistic Celtic supporter, and I'm not the most optimistic Celtic supporter at times, but would have been pleased if we kept one of them. And I would have agreed with Anthony in terms of CCV being the priority, in terms of just giving that solidity and best defender we've seen, in my opinion, since Virgil van Dijk. Best defender by a street. Gives us that solidity at the back. Jota, I think Jota's importance to the team has probably become more evident probably this season, just in terms, even in recent weeks, just in terms of the way he's, just his determination, aside from he's got all the skills and the flicks, just his determination, his work rate defensively. So very important players. And then Moy is, he's pretty much made us forget about Rogic, hasn't he? So, I mean, most Celtic fans love Tom Rogic. Yeah, I mean, Tom Rogic, what a footballer, but Moy's more consistent. He's a different kind of player. Moy had a bit of a slow start, but I think particularly since he's come back from the World Cup, where I thought he was truly his best player, he's really come on in leaps and bounds, and he's so important to the team at the moment. So very important. And again, Ange got it spot on. And that's probably one final point is these guys generally get someone on loan in Celtic history. They generally, if they've done well, they don't want to stay. These guys wanted to stay. They want to be there. They want to contribute to the environment, to the culture, those sort of things, the intangibles that are very important that I think helped us get them.
Yeah. And yeah, I was surprised. I was very surprised as well, especially the longer the Jota thing went on. It was getting a bit hairy and we're just like, what is this guy doing? But yeah, What in Ange we trust, no matter who is actually dealing with the transfer things now, it does seem to be change days around Celtic. So to the point where this Abada rumor is like not really got anyone sweating, because we're just like, cool, we'll just get someone else, and we're not kind of scraping around the SPFL to see who's the best Willow Flood or Yusuf Malumbu that's available to us, as we mentioned. Next up, Anthony, you added in the fifth league game of the season on the 28th of August when Celtic travelled to Dundee to Tannadice and had a slightly convincing scoreline that day that I believe did it for the opposition manager. Would you like to go into more detail on that one?
Well, this was the game where Celtic thumped Dundee United 9-0. And obviously at this point in the season, we didn't know how bad a season Dundee United were going to have. But I just kind of feel that this really, talking about statements, obviously we made our signings in the summer, but this was the game that we probably would have had every other team in the SPFL bricking it, going, oh God, they put 9 past Dundee United away from home. It was quite a performance. Kogo had his hat-trick before half-time. Abada had a hat-trick in the second half. Even Carl Southfeld got on the score sheet, which doesn't happen all too often. And this was after Stephen Fletcher brained Joe Hart early in the game. So he sort of slid in, and I kind of feel probably should have, maybe at least got a yellow card. He was sort of like, nowhere near the ball. And they hit the post as well, so they could equalise. So the game could have turned out quite differently in some ways, but once we got going, we just absolutely tore them to shreds. And like I said, I think, we talked about the low block and the two banks of 5. Like, I think this game had a lot to potentially do for the follow-up games, because managers are probably going, how do we control this and contain this? Because we weren't happy with 3, we weren't happy with 4, we weren't happy with 6. Like, we just kept going. We were absolutely relentless that day, and it really just, like I said, boosted the goal difference and just set a marker down to say we're here to, we're ready to take teams apart. So I kind of feel that was an important first cog in where we are at the moment.
Is that your feelings as well, Tommy? Was it a statement win more than anything?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, that was number 6 on my list, because I had that pretty high up as well. And but there's been obviously quite a few games this year, but that one definitely. I mean, Kyogo, I think was his first or second goal, just instant finish, 25 yards outside the box.
Second one. Yeah.
Second one, yeah. I mean, and then, yeah, I mean, the only disappointment that day was it wasn't 10, really, and it could have been 10 or more. I mean, we were just absolutely irresistible. And as Anthony said, it just put down a marker for the rest of the league. And yeah, that was just a little taster of what was to come.
For me, I was glad I was going to put it on, but I was glad to see Anthony added to the run sheet, because I just wanted to drop in there that was the only game I've been to in the last 4 years or whatever because of COVID. So I managed to get a ticket for the away end, which was a great experience. Just the singing, away end's great. You stand up the whole time, singing the whole time, and then to have 9 goals put in as well was brilliant. Yeah, I really enjoyed that day out. Had the Celtic Down Under flag up and everything. The police tried to take it off me as well. I don't know, man. Abuse of power, whatever. I was like, mate, it's a kangaroo with boxing gloves. What do you want?
Dare I say you were a lucky man, Sean?
Well, yeah. Honestly, it was really...
A lucky man like Ange to be there.
But yeah, Dundee is a rough-looking place around about those football stadiums, I'll tell you. I wouldn't have been too keen on living there. So I was back in, because I was back, and I did get to go to that game. The reason I was back was for my brother's wedding, which took place his wedding was on the 3rd of September, which happened to be the same day that for the first time in however long, they scheduled Celtic versus Sevco or Rangers derby on a Saturday. So I was standing watching I managed to watch most of the first half of the game while I was standing in my kilt waiting for him to do stuff. And I'm like dancing around the hotel room, like singing it. And then we're all at the ceremony, like giving each other winks and nods and updates of what's happening and stuff like that. My brother's over there trying to get married. And like half the people at the ceremony are looking at their phones. So note to self, if that happens in future, change your start time. If somebody happens to be getting married. Anthony, that was you both guys added that onto your sheet. Tommy, what was your memory of that day?
For me, I was a little bit apprehensive before the game because I think previous two games we'd sort of lost to them in the semi-final of the Cup, and we sort of seemed to run out of legs against them towards the end of the game in extra time. And I think we drew 1-1 with them at Celtic Park. So it's sort of given them a little bit of a boost, I think, mentality-wise, in terms of where we are as a team and what they could do against us. So I was a little bit apprehensive, but to me, when I went to the Celtic Sports Club that night with my mum. Great night. But right from the off, to me, it felt like the midweek game in the previous season, where we beat them 3-0. And in the first half, we just completely blew them away. I mean, it could have been 4 or 5. And it really put down a marker. And following on from, I think, the previous week, Dundee United, I sort of said, you're going to have a tough time keeping up with us this year. And some of the goals that we scored, I mean, Jota's goal, the quick free kick from McGregor to O'Reilly, the pass through, the finish by Jota. I mean, it's just unbelievable football. And there was a lot of that in the first half. That's just one moment. Abada just being the Hun scalper that he is, just ghosting into central positions and finishing. Their keeper was pretty poor, to be honest. But, I thought we were actually tremendous that day. And we just managed the game in the second half. Similar to how we did in the February game, like the previous season, that sent us top of the league. But yeah, a very enjoyable day.
Yeah. Did you enjoy it, Anthony? Was it proved that 3-0 game was not a flash in the pan and that we were here to dominate them?
I just I watched the highlights back today just to refresh my memory, and it was just the pace at which we were playing was just phenomenal. We would just absolutely run them ragged. The ball boys were getting the ball back on the park. We took a quick throw in for the first goal. It was, as Tommy said, it was a quick free kick for the second goal for Jota's chip. And then we pretty much ruined John McLaughlin's career because he passed the ball straight to David Turnbull for the third goal. So he's hardly been in the sticks since then because he had a mare. So we just absolutely blitzed it. And the only sad thing was it didn't end up more, really, because it was one of those ones where you kind of felt like we really could make a bit of to be a 5, a 6, a 7. Like we're up for it. But the second half, it sort of slowed down a bit. But we absolutely blew them away in that first half. The damage was done. Abada ghosting in as he does, leaving Barisic stone cold. And it was just, like I said, again, another, opened up the, that let us do 5 points clear at that point, I think, once we beat them. So so that sort of opened the gap and just was like, 9-0 the week before, 4-0 against them. It was like, come and catch us if you think you can, but you're going to have to. And this is where, Van Bronckhorst was getting pelters because, again, Rangers hadn't really started that badly, but just, again, it was because they were getting compared to us. He was getting pelters. And so that was the start of that. So.
Yeah, and Peter McGowan's mentioned in the comments here, Jota's chip. I forgot about that in the celebration that caused all the controversy. There's always so much comes out of these things. Like I think that was the start of the ball boy conspiracy from the Sevco fan media and stuff like that. There's all they whatever they have to do to try and rationalize us just being a superior team, they will do. Was it the unseen Fenian hand? Is that the one they talk about? All of this stuff, like for them to think that there's some sort of conspiracy against them is utter madness. But it was a state. Yeah, great. It was great. It was really, as you said, Tommy. I never have and never will be confident ahead of a Celtic and Sevco or Rangers game, and I'll always be nervous. I'll never be, and it was the same for that game, and it'll be the same for the next one, and it'll be the same for the one after that. As Celtic fans of a certain age, you're just got a saccharine version of PTSD from the 90s, living through the 9 in a row, having our necks stood on. So we'll just never really have the same confidence that a young Celtic fan might have going into these games. So what that did, as you mentioned, Anthony did give us a 5-point lead in the league, and the thing that I've put on the run sheet next was two weeks later, just over 2 weeks later, and I put down our defeat to St Mirren is one of the crucial points in the season, and for various reasons. So, if you remember back to the season after the Invincible season, this kind of unbeaten run starts to become the word they were using back then was a millstone around the neck, when we lost after 69 games, and they were literally saying it was almost a relief. So when St Mirren beat us, it broke a 38 game streak, which is equivalent to an invincible season. 364 days without a league defeat, going back to the Livingston one the year before, and I felt like it allowed us to refocus. It was obviously an awful day. We hate losing, especially in that manner, but we took a lot out of it. It took away the pressure of going for an invincible season. It took away the pressure of that unbeaten run. And it also taught us that Aaron Moy can't play number 6, which was a good thing as well. And there was one success in the day that the Green Brigade and all the Celtic away fans absolutely hijacked the minute's applause for the Queen's death in the most hilarious and sarcastic manner. So I thought that was difficult at the time, but looking back, I don't know if we'd be in the same place we are if we hadn't got that. If that hadn't happened to us that day, I feel like it was maybe a turning point domestically. Tommy?
Yeah, look, I totally agree. It's another one that I thought about putting down on when I put the list in, just purely for that, because it was just a reality check to show that, if we don't turn up and play the way that Ange wants us to play, then, we can't get done, because these teams will sit in and then they'll just try and hit you on the break, get a cross into the box, and it can happen. So it was a very un-Celtic-like performance since Ange came in. I don't think I've actually seen them play like that, and it's just one out of the box, a really strange one if you look back on it now. It just seems so abnormal. But for me, I think we had Gents and Welsh starting at centre-half that day as well. So, you take the teams. You can't understate the importance of CCV and Starfelt to the team and the balance and the structure that they give defensively. So I'm not saying that's an excuse. The whole team was pretty poor that day, but it was definitely a valuable lesson. And as you say, it was good to get the sort of millstone off the neck as well. So, yeah.
Anthony, what did you think of it?
Well, I never actually saw this game live at the time, so I was sort of watching it back, try to piece it together. But from what I could see, Welsh and Jens were a bit culpable for the goals. They're both sort of cross ball, set piece type header situations, and neither of them were close to either of them. So I think that's definitely a factor. And I don't think we really created that much either. So, I'd say I'm not just blaming them, but I think just overall it was just a very poor performance. And if memory serves, Ange rung the changes for this match between that and the midweek Europe game, I think. So.
A couple of changes, yeah. That was Moy came in. He was one of the ones that came in. McGregor pushed forward. Don't think there was too many changes elsewhere. But
so I just kind of think Ange maybe will end up be less than that day as well, like not to. Just wee subtle changes sort of thing rather than sort of, dropping players in. And I think, Moy didn't have a good game either, but I think just too many subpar performances and St Mirren took their chances and that grey top, which thankfully we've since banished the hoodoo of. But I mean, watching it that day, it was quite hard to tell because both teams were wearing black shorts as well. So it was really, really quite difficult to actually follow it. But I think enough said, enough Debbie Downer on that one. So on to the next one.
Well, I was actually just going to make one final point, but just based on what you guys were saying and what Peter said in the comments, we did have 80% possession in that game, and it taught us the lesson that having the ball does not equal good quality opportunities or the right to win a game. You have to actually have quality and intensity on the ball, not just have it. And that was kind of the complaint, wasn't it, in the second and third season under Rodgers, was so much of the ball, but what are we actually doing, so there was, that was my kind of thoughts on that one based on the fact that we actually had more possession than we'd normally have. I think when we beat them 5-1, we had 72, 73%, and on that day we had 80%. So not having the ball is not the be all and end all. The next one on my list was also, because we were looking at moments, I'd chosen also a negative moments, but this one in the sense that Callum McGregor's red card on the 1st of October for me was a crucial moment. So the score of the game in the end was 2-1 to Celtic over Motherwell. We had 1-0 lead, and then Juranovic tries to chest the ball back to Joe Hart and chests it past him into the own goal. And then we have Tati gives us the lead with a wonder goal, and we're doing fine. We're going to be they're playing the next day. And then a Tati back pass, shocking. Your boy Tierney is about to go through in goals, and McGregor just pulls him back. Now, you could argue that Welsh was going to cover it, but either way, I think Callum McGregor, 89th minute of the game, has made a very deliberate, instinctive, and on-the-spot decision. Like, I'm not giving this guy a clear run at goal, where I think Stephen Welsh is going to cover or not. I'm just going to take the red card here. And it may or may not have, but probably did save us dropping 2 points, which would have seen Sevco pool level with us on points. So I'm saying that McGregor red card was absolutely crucial in what was a otherwise quite unmemorable game. Tommy, do you remember it at all?
I remember Hitati's goal. I remember the own goal from Juranovic, and I definitely remember McGregor's red card from the pass from Hitati, because Hitati had a decent game and then obviously scored a cracking goal. But I think McGregor done the professional thing. Like, you don't like to say it, but at that stage of the game, if it's the difference between 3 points and 1 point in a tight league season, you've got to do it. And he done the right thing. Overall, it was a pretty unmemorable game at that stage of the season. It was after the highs of the Dundee United, the Rangers game, and that we were just sort of ticking along. We were probably playing midweek games in Europe and then trying to come back on Saturday, which always makes it more difficult, and rotating the squad maybe a little bit. It was just all about getting the results then, and that's what McGregor's red card done for us. And then I think he got injured on the Wednesday as well at Leipzig, didn't he? So
was that same week?
I'm pretty sure that was.
Oh, that's right, it was, because we were worried about him being suspended. No,
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. He's injured anyway. Anthony, do you reckon that red card is worth the same as our last-minute winner?
Well, it was that solidified it me as Cal Mack being the captain of Celtic, because that was what captains of Celtic do. They take one for the team, and he knew what he was doing, and he made the right decision, because I wouldn't be trusting Welsh to cover anything. So no disrespect to Stephen Welsh, but no, it was like one of those games where, like you say, the own goal from Juranovic and just overcoming things like that sort of thing. So, and Hitati being a match winner 1 minute and nearly selling the jerseys the next. So it was just one of those performances where we got away with it and we got the win and we move on. But that was our run now of not having Cal Mack in the team for a little while. So that's where we got to see O'Reilly in that defensive number 6.
That's right. So yeah, talking about whether that equates to a last-minute equaliser or not, since it keeps 3 points instead of turning it into 1. The following week, we had a similar situation in the 8th of October, where we're playing St Johnstone, we're 1-0 up, we look kind of cruisy, but then St Johnstone equalise in the 93rd minute, deep into injury time. And then what happens is, within 90 seconds, Bernabe's beat his man, found some space in the wing, and found Giacomakis in the box to score a 95th minute winner. And on that day, Sevco would have drawn level on points if we had dropped the 2. That's written in my notes here. So that was one that absolutely kept us on top at that point. We seem to be having quite a habit, kind of broken the habit recently, but that was one of those ones where we had this kind of consistent spell of scoring late winners, whereas recently we've just been winning earlier in games. Were you bouncing off the roof at that one, Anthony? Do you remember it well?
I remember Giacomakis scoring, and then that's the one he ran at the crowd, isn't it? And he took his shirt off, and he takes
his shirt off at every goal, mate.
I know, but this one in particular, he was pretty excited because, fair enough, you scored a late winner, and it was one of those days you're thinking 1-0 is it going to be enough, and then sure enough it wasn't, and thankfully we never stopped, so we sort of got there in the end. But probably 2 things overlooked there: Bernabe being provider there, and the second thing is Giacomakis actually did pop up with a few important goals in the first half of the season. So obviously he's away now, but you actually go back and watch some of those tight games, and he's the one that actually got on the score sheet and actually made a bit of a difference and gave us a different dimension. So getting his head on it, or just those sort of one-touch finishes. But that one in particular, he was pretty pleased with. If it's what I'm thinking of, it was he was pretty pleased with that, which is fair enough. So.
Well, obviously he does take his shirt off a lot. But Tommy, do you remember more clearly what happened there?
I remember it quite vividly, to be honest, mate. Because this game, we were having my wife's sister and husband over for a few drinks, and I'd nicked off into the lounge, and my brother-in-law is American, didn't really know what was going on, to be honest, but he sort of left us in the first half. We were 1-0 up. Haksabanovic, lovely reverse ball by Hattari to play Haksabanovic in, then on goal. Should have been 2 or 3 up at half time, probably. Abada missed the sitter in front of the goal. Second half, we had more chances. I think Giacomakis had one ruled out for offside, a header from a free kick. Abada went through 1-on-1, missed it. And then, they got the goal later on. So actually what happened was they got the goal later on. I was bursting to go to the toilet for number one, try not to swear. And as I get up to walk out, my eldest daughter came in. She said, "Are you coming out here?" And I was like, "Don't even talk to me." Went to the toilet, came back, we took the kick off and went up the park and scored. It was, so I remember very well. I was going off my head. They all thought I was a lunatic, which I am. But I think one of the most important things about that second goal is the McCarthy touch. McCarthy is only on the pitch for 5 or 10 minutes, just gets the ball, just gets in, just gets a toe in, puts Burnaby away, and what a cross and finish. Giacomakis he'd done that a few times for us. So it was very enjoyable. Yeah,
Mahesh has mentioned that in the comments. I actually forgot myself that McCarthy had a role in that goal. Probably the last thing he did, and might be the last thing he does. Peter McGowan's mentioned he kicked his coffee table into the air. I'm personally quite guilty of over-celebrating these sort of last-minute winners. I get quite tense when it goes in late in a game and we're not winning, and I do unload a little bit. So no criticism for Giacomakis for taking his top off on that occasion. Unfortunately, in this next one, Greg Taylor failed to take his top off when he did get as a winner in what was probably, if you're neutral, you would argue it's the most entertaining Celtic game this year from a neutral perspective. When we went to Tynecastle and won 4-3. At one point, we were 2-1 down. The goals were from Forrest to start with. Giacomakis scored one, Maeda, and before Hearts pegged us back to 3 each. And then in the 76th minute, Greg Taylor gets the winner. Anthony, you had this one down as one of your moments of the season. Talk us through it.
Well, this game, there's actually footage of me on the couch actually just going mental because I was just losing it with the VAR. This was one of the first games with VAR, I think, and I was just tearing my hair out. And they reviewed the decision, so they got the penalty. CCV clashed with the Hearts forward, and they gave a penalty for that. So I was like, fair enough, all right, whatever. And then Michael Smith's basically playing basketball in the opposition half. Like Forrest has flicked it into his wrist, and they've went, "No, the VAR's not going to look at that." And I'm just going, "What?" So it was just one of those days. It was absolutely crazy. Shanklin scores a hat trick and still manages to lose the game. Joe Hart actually saves a penalty, but it gets a retake because everyone encroached. So he actually did save one, but then Giannelli scored the rebound. So it still would have been a goal anyway, but then they retook it and then Shanklin scored the retake. It was just one of those games, it was just doing my head in, and it was stop-start because of the VAR was taking so long. So it just felt that everything was against Celtic that day, and then we obviously rose above it and managed to come away 4-3. And Greg Taylor, of all people, popping up with the winner, doing a bit of an Abada and ghosting in on the left-hand side and sliding in and getting his big toe on it and getting us the win. But it was, I was absolutely spent after that game. I remember watching that one, and that was quite a night.
Yeah, definitely. And it was, I remember I was watching it in the supporters club down at Johnny Fox's. It was a good night as well. A lot of people standing on chairs and stuff to celebrate. Tommy, the next one on the run sheet is one that you added, and it's a similar vein. It was another game where Celtic scored 4 goals and didn't exactly keep too much out at the back. Do you want to talk us through that one, the Dundee United game 2 weeks later?
Yeah, so that was when we beat Dundee United 4-2. It was another one where just VAR's only in a week or two, and we got another one of those dodgy penalty decisions given against us by Burnaby. We went 1-0 up with Haksabanovic, and then VAR got involved and gave a penalty against Burnaby when he wasn't even looking at the ball. Then we got 2-1 up, and then we had chances to make it 3 or 4-1. Forrest hit the bar. Abada had a chance, and we just didn't make it. Just didn't get the third goal to finish it off. And I actually remember watching it. I was watching it here on silent because wife and kids were in bed. And I remember thinking, I'd get bad for them. They're going to score here. So I was actually hoping that they would score quicker so as that we give us time to come back. And then they scored, obviously, I think, 87th, 88th minute. Mm-hmm. But you know what? With this team, like, you just think it's never over until the final whistle goes. And I still thought, you know, we've still got a chance here. And we went up the park and we put pressure on them. We could have scored before we did. And then a great corner from O'Reilly, flick on from Ralston and Kyogo. And if you watch a replay of that goal, the movement of Kyogo to make that space in the box to get that header in is incredible. And then O'Reilly again, with a great through ball. Maeda lets it go deliberately. And Abada is in a lovely finish. And I was silently cheering. I was going off my head. It was a bit weird, to be honest. But it was like, you know, that in the St. Johnstone game and then a few games last year, it's just like, you know, this is why this team to me is a very special team, because they just keep going no matter what the state of play is.
And look, we spoke earlier about us playing before or after Sevco, and on that day we were the first at weekend. We were the first to play, and we beat Dundee United with the winner, and then the next day Sevco follow up with that loss to St. Johnstone. So, you know, it seems like it could, the psychological pressure could make a difference. I mean, they're the ones that are having to get in these psychological coaches, right, to kind of counsel their players through things. And then the following week, we had another comeback victory where we go 2-1, not comeback, but you know what I mean. We go 1-0 down to Ross County, another dodgy VAR decision. A lot of that up in the comments here. There's only a title race thanks to VAR. Celtic 4, VAR 3. Mahesh, Celtic 9 points, lead due to Celtic getting out of jail in a few games, and GVB Rangers didn't. Talking about back then, but the VAR certainly played a role in the Matt O'Reilly handball when we go 1-0 down to Ross County at Celtic Park, and we then get Hatate kind of grabbing the ball and setting up Turnbull and Haksabanovic for a couple of goals. Anthony, do you remember that game well? It's on Tommy's run sheet, but what's your...
Yeah, I sort of watched, I quickly watched the highlights like tonight before I left work, and I do remember that penalty decision strong. Like, was he even in the box? Like, it looked, I was just...
That's the point, yeah.
I was just like, exactly, and you just kind of feeling like this was the third iffy penalty in the space of 3 weeks or whatever. So you're kind of feeling at this point it was things were getting stacked against this sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, obviously we didn't leave it too late to get the winners, but yeah, it was just, again, it's just we find a way, and I think, you know, we just, it's just in the nature of this team that they keep going and keep going and keep going, and then if they don't do it, well, we'll bring some players off the bench and they'll sort of do it. I mean, Turnbull in this instance, that was probably, you know, one of his more important contributions, and even Haksabanovic, he's popped up a few highlight reels, like some of the games I watched back for today's show, and like, again, games where you sort of didn't really remember at the time, you go back and go, he actually laid the assist on for that, or he actually got on the end of for the goal sort of thing. I really think he's a dark horse. I really think we need to figure out how to unlock more of him, because I think he, you know, if Abada does go, for instance, then, you know, I think he's the next cab off the rank in terms of getting more of a start. I don't know, you know, if there's reasons why that's not happened sooner, but obviously you've got to force out the players that are there, and, you know, Maeda's been on great form up until, you know, very recently. Jota's probably lifted a couple of gears recently. So yeah, but I just think that, you know, there's just, we've got that depth, especially in the wide areas when we need it. We seem to be able to, if somebody's not having a great game, then somebody comes off the bench and provides that spark that we need. And I think that's important going forward for this run, and particularly if we're starting to pick up injuries now, because we might not have our preferred 11 for some of the games coming up. So we need to make sure that everybody's sort of ready to contribute.
So that's so Tommy, I'll pass to you because it was your suggestion that this is a top 5 moment. But just to point out, that was the ones we're talking about here. That was 4 games in the space of 5 weeks, where we're coming back from either getting equalised or going behind. Games where we're having to fight it back in the second half 4 times in 5 weeks. Tommy, why was this one your top 5?
The reason this one was in the top 5 is a couple of reasons. One is I think Rangers might have dropped points at St Mirren that day as well, so it gave us the chance to go 9 points later. I could be wrong in that. So I think they played at lunchtime. And we were going into a World Cup break, so there wasn't going to be any football for a while. The team were coming to Australia. I was going to Sydney with my mum to see them. And I just thought it was just such an important win just to sign off that period that we've been playing okay. But just the character in terms of, we go a goal behind to a dodgy decision yet again, and we don't let it bother us. I thought Hattari was incredible for the 2 goals. Just probably even the first one where he sort of made the move and took the guy on and cut it across, but just the weight of his touch for Haksabanović's finish, and just a beautiful finish, just like passing it into the absolute corner of the net, and what it meant from a league perspective. I just thought it was a pretty important result.
You're quite right. I had not noticed that when I was adding it to the run sheet. Sevco did draw 1-1 away to St Mirren that day, so that was where our 9-point lead came from, which we've not relinquished since then, as we've won every game consecutively in the league, apart from one. So what happened was we then had a week after that, we went on a break for the World Cup, and we then come back, and we've got a trip to Pittodrie, so nice, easy game to come back to. We're kind of struggling to break them down. This was the beginning of the end for Jim Goodwin, if you remember it, where he decided Aberdeen are on a great run of form going into the break. They're scoring goals for fun, not doing too well defensively, but they're still getting results. They come to play us, and they decide to just park every bus behind, not even showing the slightest bit of adventure. I think the closest they came to even an offensive move was the couple of times Duke went into our half and dived, and it was like the most one-sided of one-sided games, even though it was in Aberdeen. But either way, they were on course to get their point. Classic Jim Goodwin, St Mirren tactic that they used to do as well. And then 87th minute, Callum McGregor absolutely shot out of nowhere, doesn't through a crowd of players, beats the keeper, and it was one of those ones late, frustration lifted, and we get the ball rolling, and we've not really looked back since. It could have been one of those ones where you get a psychological blow coming back from the break, but instead we get a boy, and we've won almost every game since then. Anthony, how's your memory of that one?
Well, yeah, it was just sort of, again, it was one of those games where it's like you felt like you've seen this before, just the real defensive dour tactics, particularly at Pittodrie. Like, you think, why would you set up like that at home? Like, it was just so negative. So just, you kind of felt like it was going to be a shot from the edge of the box that was probably going to seal the deal sort of thing as the game was just dragging on, because they just weren't giving anything away. And that was obviously Callum McGregor's first competitive game back, obviously, from injury as well. So, to pop up and score the winner, it was like, hey guys, I'm back. And we're not going to give this 9-point lead away without a fight. And, and that's, and I get, like you say, that was probably the beginning of the end for Jim Goodwin, because, you're sitting there as a fan thinking, like, we've actually, say they've been playing reasonably well at that point. It's like, well, come out and have a go, but no, we're just trying to sit in and hope and try and drag a nil-all draw, and then you end up getting beat anyway. So it was just a very frustrating afternoon up until the 87th minute. If
my memory is correct, that was Callum McGregor's first game back since injury. He needed the World Cup break to recover. We're running out of time, Tommy, so what I'll do is the next one you added to the run sheet as well was the 2nd of January. And it was so the 2 games that we've not won this season in the league are both on our run sheet as crucial moments. So there's this defeat to St Mirren for kind of weird reasons. And then this other one on the 2nd of Jan, when we go to Ibrox and get criticised for disrupting a minute's silence, which it turns out afterwards was actually disrupted by Sevco fans. Thanks for that. Probably the last game that we're going to see 800 Celtic fans at Ibrox. So that's another interesting landmark there. And we're winning 1-0 thanks to Maeda intercepting a bad pass from Morelos. And also for Tavernier failing to defend. But then we start sluggish in the second half. Sevco go 2-1 up, and for all the world, they're bringing on defensive players, and for all the world, we look like we're going to lose 2-1. Kyogo pops up 88th minute and scores an equaliser. Now, normally a draw is points dropped, but when it's against the team that's chasing you, it keeps your 9-point lead, which would have been cut to 6 points if the whistle had gone 5 minutes earlier. To paraphrase a famous Steven Gerrard frustration. Tommy, did you enjoy that game? Did you watch it out? Were you watching it at home?
Yeah, and I was at the CSC, Johnny Fox's, with my mum. Obviously, great start. My Eriksen finish as well. First 25, 30 minutes, we're in complete control. It looks like, we're just streets ahead of them. And then everyone talks about the Joe Hart moment, which did influence the game because that obviously got their crowd up and about. But I think probably more important was I think Greg Taylor going off really disrupted the balance of a team that day. I think I've said on here before, I think I just see him as so important to the balance and structure of the team. I think him going off and then Juranovic coming on to have his worst game for Celtic was a major contributing factor. And then we've heard some rumours of them carrying a sickness or a virus going through the camp. And then, for us to get out of there, I mean, a last-minute equaliser, practically, what it was, you feel like you've won the game just about, particularly when you're the team that's ahead, you're 9 points ahead in the league, sorry. But I think just before the equaliser, the one thing that maybe doesn't get spoken about is CCV. When Tillman was sort of through in goals and CCV comes from nowhere and makes that block, then, we got the park and score. But for me, psychologically, that was a huge result because Bale had come in and he's not stopped talking, but he was in his pomp then. He was, and for us to come back and not give them anything and not give them a sniff, to me, I just thought it was a really important thing psychologically. So.
Yeah, we were talking about moments rather than results, and you could almost say that CCV block was up there as the one of the moments of the season, alongside stuff like the Callum McGregor red card. So it's not always last minute equalisers that are as crucial. Anthony, do you want to touch on that game, or are you happy to move on to?
I just try to say it was probably one of those game of two halves type games where, like, if we'd have kept going the way we were going, you're thinking we're on for the result here. But yeah, it didn't quite pan out that way. But I'd much rather walk away with a draw and keep that 9-point lead, which we ended up doing. So yeah.
Yeah, I remember the worst looking players that day that you looked like they were sick was Juranovic and O'Reilly and Jota when he came on. They all looked like they should have been in bed.
Even Greg Taylor looked terrible as well when he came off. Like that was the day. That was not the day he called Morelos fat boy. That was that.
That's
day,
right.
Wasn't it?
Oh yeah, classic meme.
That was funny.
Yeah. So I think I don't know if it says something about. I was going to say maybe says something about how much graft we put in the first half of the season, or maybe it just says that we've only played X number of games since then. That most of our key moments were up to this point, and we've only actually got one after this point, and that was not even a league game. So since then, if you're reading into it, you'd say we've been comfortable in the league, winning games by 2 or 3 goals, which is good. We've not been relying on last minute winners, which is good. Certainly less stressful. But then, do you want to tell us then, Anthony, what was the big moment, the big context around this League Cup final win over Sevco?
Well, for me, Sean, it was just the fact that the Huns were just in the media that week, or for a couple of weeks leading up to it, just building up bigger than Ben-Hur. Like they really needed it. They really needed to win that League Cup. And I just kind of felt, well, if we win it, fantastic. We're on for a treble. That's great. That's brilliant. But I kind of feel that if we lost it, I don't feel that would derail our season, but I kind of feel that they needed that to sort of hang on to and say, well, if we can beat them in a cup final, then we might still be able to catch them in the league. But I think, the belief's going to start to go a bit after that. Like I said, they were running their mouth off constantly, and then, we were the ones that lifted the cup. They didn't even stay in the park to watch us lift the cup, so there was a bit of like a lack of a lot of disrespect there as well. Yeah, I mean, obviously not in the league itself, but I just kind of feel that, they really needed it a lot more than we did. And I just think it's just one more thing to say, well, you're still, as much as you want to keep up with us, you're just not on the same level as us.
Yeah, and I think the scoreline even flatters them. And you're right in what you're saying. Like all the narrative before was we're the best team and we're going to prove it. And it wasn't just from Sakala mostly, but there was other people like in the media, Chris Jack and people like that saying the same thing. Sevco are the better team, and they're going to show it on the cup final day. And they've clearly not learned a lesson because they've been saying it since. James Devernier's came out since and said that they're going to prove it the next time they play us. We're going to see the real them. And if that happens to be a cowering Barisic at the back post, then I'll be happy to see it for a third time. Tommy, were you at the club for the cup final? I was there. Would I have bumped into you by any chance when I was bouncing off people?
Yeah, no, I was there. I was there with my mum again, and I didn't bump into you. I can't remember seeing you, but I remember.
I was all over everyone that night, Tommy. I was climbing on everyone's back, so there's a chance I was on your back.
But yeah, I remember like being really tense when they scored because I felt like we'd lost control of the game for about 15, 20 minutes. But then I actually watched the game back the next day, and I didn't think we were under that much pressure, to be honest. I actually felt we were in a lot more control than I actually felt during the emotion of the game. And yeah, we should have ended up winning, 3 or 4-1. That was the only disappointment, probably, is not putting a bit of icing on the cake, but totally deserved to win. Sure, we're a far better football team, and let's do it again a couple of times this season.
But one thing that I enjoyed as well was in the lead up to the talk, even Neil McCann literally said, Sevco can not literally said Sevco, but he was saying that the team in the blue half of Glasgow can still win the treble. So the word treble came out a lot in the build up, and it even came out after, asking Ange about it after the game, and obviously he shut it down, and it's been shut down, and the words barely came out since that week, maybe the 2 or 3 days after, and since then it's been back focused. We're not talking about that, and it's been good. I can't remember who was it, whatever game it was 2 weeks ago, and they were asking again. They asked Postecoglou what it meant for the season or what it meant like for the title. I can't remember the actual question, but what he came back with was, look, every game is an opportunity to create magic. And it's not just about ticking boxes and winning games. Every game is an opportunity to do something special. And it's certainly playing out that way. And we've got 9 games left in the league, potentially 2 in the cup. And sometimes you can't tell how good a season is or even multiple seasons until it's over and you have time to step back and take a look, and you can't appreciate the artwork until it's finished, kind of thing. But it's worth taking stock at this moment of where we are. We're statistically our second best ever league campaign. We've won the League Cup and we've got a chance at a treble. There's 11 games left. 3 of them are against Sevco. So 3 out of 11 games are going to be nerve fraught, but also a chance to really win the biggest kind of victory. So that's where my feeling is at the moment. This could be one of the best seasons ever. Up until now, it is one of the best seasons ever so far. And if we can keep going for the next 11 games, then that hopefully pans out and remains the case to the end. Tommy, do you want to sum us up before we sign out?
Yeah, no, look, I echo everything you said there, mate. You summed it up really well. The one thing I would say is, and I know it's a cliche, and I know it's like an Ange thing, but we never stop. We're relentless. We keep going. You never know when this team is done, no matter what the score is. And at the 2-2 game at Ibrox, I remember turning to, it wasn't you, someone else that didn't know, and saying, we can still come back, and there was 5 minutes to go. Even though we weren't playing well, you just knew that we might get a chance because they'll keep going. And we've done it, and we've done it so many times. And we keep doing that, then hopefully we will have a treble at the end of the year.
Anthony, what's your overview?
Oh, look, I'm really enjoying this season. I mean, Europe aside, I think they've done absolutely everything you could possibly ask from a Celtic team. I mean, and this year quite unusual having that World Cup break. So the first half of the season, I felt like we were we started the season really, really well, and then obviously, as Celtic tend to do, as heading towards Christmas, it's sort of like sometimes you feel like you're on fumes, and we're a wee bit like that, getting those last minute dash results right up until the World Cup break. But we've come back and to put 28 points out of 30 to go to Castle Greystone and get a draw. If we weren't playing at our best and we were a bit under the weather, then fantastic. And like I say, we've gone on from there. We've been very comfortable in the league since then. There's not been too many sort of, maybe St Mirren game were a wee bit touchy at half time, but we end up battering them 5-1. So it's everything to look forward to. They're basically putting all their eggs in a semi-final for the Scottish Cup, but we've got a chance to win it. Well, we're going to win the league, very good chance to win the league, and potentially go for a treble. So, I know where I'd rather be. Regardless of what people are saying in the media, like it's just absolutely nonsense. So,
yeah, I just hope we're not looking back and saying like, that bad pitch at Hampden and bad refereeing decision is what cost us a treble. Like we still look back on the Rivoni Dyla one with the Lee Griffiths header in the semi-final against Inverness. I don't know if you remember that. So we still talk about that one, and I hope that's not the case. I think it's almost easier to rationalize something when you underperform, when your team plays bad. That's almost easier to live with than having it stolen from you. So I hope we keep playing well, and I hope we do well enough to overcome any extraneous adversity that tries to stop us in making this one of the best seasons ever. Cool. So we're a little bit over our time, but I think there were some things that we needed to cover there. So apologies and thanks for everyone that's stuck with us over the hour. And thanks to everyone that's been joining in the comments. Just a quick reminder, please follow us on social media. Our social links are up the top there on the screen at Celtic Down Under. Feel free to follow any of our contributors. Our Twitter handles are on the screen here as well. And apart from that, enjoy the shows on Tuesday and Wednesday. And I believe Celtic are playing Sunday at 7 p.m. Western Australia time, which would be, the clock's changed out east yet?
I think they have, yeah. I'm not 100% sure, but I think they have.
So it's going to be 9 p.m. Sydney, Melbourne on Sunday as well. So it'd be better if it was a Saturday, but still a nice, comfortable evening time for us to enjoy here in Australia. Other than that, that's all for us tonight. We'll just say enjoy the shows and hail, hail.
Hail, hail.